The series begins with Hae-run visiting a salon with an innovative hair washing concept. While waiting, she's startled by the arrival of Shohun, a handsome employee in his 40s assigned to wash her hair. As Shohun begins his task, he accidentally brushing against Hae-run's ear. She grows nervous and strikes up a conversation about the salon's unique approach. Shohun reveals that employees like him are assigned numbers, and he's known as employee number 33. Impressed by his voice, Hae-run compliments him, but Shohun swiftly finishes his work and leaves. Since that encounter, Hae-run finds herself often thinking about Shohun. A few days later, she returns to the salon, hoping to be served by employee number 33 again. However, she's surprised to find a different employee in that role, learning that Shohun was just a temporary replacement. The salon staff also inform her that Shohun is the owner of the salon in Shozo village. Intrigued, decides to visit the village located on the beach. Upon arrival, Hae-run asks about Shohun, but none of the villagers know him until she meets a girl who is promoting her parents' salon. Feeling sorry for the girl, Hae-run eventually chooses to wash her hair at that salon. Meanwhile, Shohun is busy building a house for his cat when Hae-run unexpectedly arrives, insisting on washing her hair at his salon. Though hesitant at first, Shohun eventually agrees. After he finishes, Hae-run asks him to trim her bangs, because she doesn't want to leave quickly. Shortly after, a woman named Amund arrives, inviting Shohun to dinner. Hae-run is taken aback by Amund's familiarity with Shohun, but decides to leave her phone behind as an excuse to return to the salon. Hae-run then got into a taxi and returned to her fancy house in the city. Despite her wealth, Hae-run often felt lonely, especially because her mother, Mrs. Jdrama, was overly protective due to Hae-run's illness and being her only child. With Jdrama busy with work every day, Hae-run spent most of her time at home with her nanny, Woo-jing, who would keep her mother updated over the phone. It wasn't surprising that Hae-run felt isolated, leading her to secretly plan a visit to Shohun while Woo-jing was away visiting her boyfriend next door. After making sure Woo-jing left, Hae-run quickly changed into a revealing long dress and then took a taxi to Shozo village. However, Hae-run found herself running through the rain toward Shohun's salon. Upon arrival, she eventually slipping and falling. Seeing Hae-run drenched, Shohun quickly offered her a towel and retrieved her phone, which she had intentionally left behind. Noticing her injured hand, Shohun insisted on escorting her. During their walk, she inquired about Shohun's relationship with Amund, but he didn't explain anything to her. Their stroll was interrupted by Shohun's friend, Pungzi, who playfully teased Shohun for accompanying a woman, despite Shohun's reputation for not dating. Feeling awkward because of Pungzi's teasing, Shohun asked Hae-run to go home alone, while he decided to stop by Pungzi's wife's restaurant. In the end, Hae-run was forced to go home alone, carrying Shohun's umbrella. When Hae-run got home, she felt relieved knowing she made it back before Woo-jing. From her room, she watched the front gate and was surprised to see her mother, Jdrama, returning. Jdrama was taken aback by Hae-run's revealing clothes and asked her to change into something more covered up. She also told Woo-jing to get rid of Hae-run's outfit. Feeling upset about not having control over her choices, secretly retrieved her clothes later. The next day, Jdrama seemed excited about preparing a birthday cake for Hae-run, who wasn't really interested in her own party. Instead, she kept herself busy in her painting room, eyeing Shohun's umbrella. When she peeking out into the garden, Hae-run was surprised to see Shohun working there as a gardener. However, she couldn't meet him as Jdrama called her for a simple birthday celebration. Jdrama purposely invited Hunyu and his aunt, who were close to Hae-run's family, to the celebration. During the event, Hae-run retreated to her painting room, followed by Hunyu, who seemed to like her and invited her to his band's concert. Though she wasn't interested on Hunyu, she accepted the invitation, planning to slip away and meet Shohun instead. On the night of Hunyu's band concert, Hae-run purposely recorded it poorly and slipped away quietly to catch a taxi to Shozo village. When she reached Shohun's salon, it was closed and all she found was his cat outside. So she decided to sketch the cat. Shortly after, Shohun arrived and admired Hae-run's drawing, prompting her to lie that she was an art teacher nearby. Hae-run then returned his umbrella, and when Amund appeared, inviting Shohun to dinner, Hae-run chose to say goodbye and leave. The next day, Hae-run visited Hunyu in the hospital, as he had broken a bone while searching for her the previous night. While showing him the video she'd taken, she confessed she had been there but got pushed back by the crowd, leading her to leave. After chatting with Hunyu, Hae-run saw Pungzi speaking to Hyunwoo's parents, who were thanking him for helping their son. Hae-run approached Pungzi to ask about Amund, and he explained that Amund and Shohun weren't romantically involved. She was the landlord of the house and salon Shohun rented. If Hae-run wanted to see Shohun, Pungzi suggested she visit him at his workplace in the lakeside park. A few days later, armed with the new information, Hae-run headed to the lakeside park and found Shohun working as a gardener there. She tried to engage him in conversation until he suggested they sit on a bench while he finished his work. As they talked, Hae-run mentioned her painting studio, which was looking for models, and proposed that Shohun pose for them for a fee. Despite some initial hesitation, Shohun eventually agreed and even gave Hae-run his phone number, which delighted her. Excitedly, Hae-run went to the painting studio where she studied painting and offered to work as a part-time teacher so she could carry out her plan to make Shohun a painting model. On another day, Shohun kept his promise and came to the studio to pose for the students. Some students asked if he could pose nude, and when Hae-run explained about nude modeling which required him to take off his clothes, he declined the offer and left because he was going back to his hometown. The following day, Hae-run visited Shozo village and felt sad upon seeing Shohun's salon closed and emptied after his departure to his hometown. Meanwhile, Jdrama, who usually kept everything under control in Hae-run's life, seemed to spend her nights alone, crying and drinking in her room. She also appeared to be taking medication to calm herself, hinting at the troubles she faced. With Shohun gone, Hae-run often found herself lost in daydreams in her room. One day, she was startled by Hyunwoo entering her room unannounced. Hae-run scolded him for it, but when Jdrama entered, Hae-run changed her tone and became more polite to Hyunwoo. He invited her to visit his family's new restaurant, and she agreed, hoping to use the opportunity to escape to Shozo village. Hae-run's plan to visit Shohun's salon worked out, and she felt elated when she saw him back from his hometown. Shohun explained that he still rented the house even though Amund's salon had closed down completely. Upon entering, Hae-run noticed a painting of Jdrama flowers on the wall and asked why he bought it, but Shohun admitted it was a random purchase. She revealed she knew the artist who painted it and explained the significance of Jdrama flowers as a symbol of fearlessness in pursuing one's desires. Their conversation was interrupted by Pungzi, who reminded Shohun about dinner and invited Hae-run to join. That evening, Shohun and Hae-run went to a place where Pungzi and others were waiting to surprise Shohun for his birthday. Despite it being his birthday, Shohun seemed unaffected, choosing to sit apart from his friends. Hae-run followed him and asked what gift he wanted from her. He simply requested a painting of the legendary Monkey King Sun Wukong. After the party ended late at night, Hae-run used the excuse of it being late to stay at Shohun's house, although Woo Jing had contacted her several times out of concern. With Pungzi having the same idea, Shohun finally agreed to let Hae-run stay, but he arranged for her to stay at a hotel managed by his acquaintance, Sholi. Not long after Shohun left, Sholi confided in Hae-run, mentioning that Shohun usually didn't pay attention to the women who approached him. Sholi revealed that Hae-run seemed to be an exception, as Shohun had shown interest in her. However, neither Sholi nor the villagers knew much about Shohun's life before he moved to the village. The next morning, Hae-run completed the painting of the Monkey King as a gift for Shohun. In gratitude, Shohun cooked breakfast for her. While they ate, Hae-run suggested painting a portrait of Shohun. Initially hesitant, Shohun eventually agreed, and Hae-run began to sketch while he quietly observed her work. When the portrait was finished, Shohun praised it, and Hae-run asked him again to model for her painting studio. Shohun didn't respond immediately. Then, unexpectedly, Hae-run pushed him onto the sofa and confessed her feelings, even giving him a brief kiss. Seeing Hae-run nervous, Shohun restrained himself and offered to escort her out. Blushing, Hae-run declined and left Shohun's house. When Hae-run got home, Woo Jing questioned her about her whereabouts the previous night, threatening to tell Jia wrong. Hae-run retaliated by reminding Woo Jing of her own secretive outings with Amund and suggested they keep each other's secrets. The next day, Hae-run planned to meet Shohun at the lake, but told Woo Jing she had been teaching painting lately because she felt bored at home. Before leaving, Hae-run dressed up in a revealing long dress. When she arrived at the lake, Shohun mentioned meeting her painting student who said Hae-run claimed to be 25, though she looked 20. Hae-run confessed she lied because she was embarrassed about her young age. Shohun asked her to forget their previous conversation before leaving her alone. Feeling dejected after Shohun turned down her feelings, Hae-run returned home and opened the novel Les Miserables, finding a paragraph that resonated with her situation with Shohun. She also retrieved a painting of Jdrama flowers from a safe, which had a similar sentiment written on it. That night, Hae-run visited Shohun's house to apologize for lying about her age and to give him the portrait painting. After handing it over, she swiftly said goodbye. Seeing her about to leave alone, Shohun offered to walk her home. Along the way, Hae-run enjoyed his attention and proposed working with him, claiming she needed money for painting supplies. Shohun mentioned he would be cutting the elderly's hair in the village the next day, and Hae-run eagerly agreed to join him. The following day, Shohun started cutting hair while Hae-run assisted him as best she could. When they finished, Shohun gave all the money he earned to Hae-run as a thank you gesture. Grateful, she sat on his lap and helped him trim his hair. Shohun couldn't help but smile at her behavior. As they tidied up, Hae-run felt dizzy and almost fell, but Shohun caught her. Worried, he asked about her health, but she insisted she was fine. Suddenly, it started raining, so they hurried back to Shohun's house. Upon arrival, he asked Hae-run to clean up and helped her dry her clothes. After a bath and changing into dry clothes, Hae-run teased Shohun again, prompting him to remind her to consider her feelings towards him. While shopping at a minimarket in Shozo village, Hae-run bumped into her mother's friend, who brought up Hae-run's past illness. Their conversation was cut short when Hanyu arrived, visiting his uncle's restaurant nearby. Soon after, they were both startled by a commotion as a little girl named Shobchan was caught stealing painting supplies. Hae-run noticed Shobchan had her Monkey King drawing and paid for the items she took, then escorted her away as if she knew her. Along the way, Hae-run questioned Shobchan about where she got the drawing, but the girl remained silent. This made Hae-run suspect Shobchan might know Shohun, so she decided to take her to his house. Upon seeing Shohun, Shobchan called him Dad, surprising Hae-run. Shohun quickly clarified that she was his niece. Curious, he asked how Hae-run knew his niece. Worried that Shobchan might get in trouble for stealing, Hae-run simply said they met at the minimarket. When Shohun left, Hae-run saw an opportunity to use Shobchan to see him more often, so she offered to teach Shobchan painting for free. Although Shobchan seemed interested, Shohun refused, as he planned to take his niece home the next day. Not ready to go home yet, Hae-run decided to follow Shohun, who was busy in the greenhouse. As she tried to tease him, she suddenly felt dizzy again. Shohun caught her before she fell, but her hand got scratched by a cactus plant. Hae-run seized the opportunity to kiss Shohun's injured hand, almost tempting him to kiss her until Shobchan interrupted them by breaking a glass. They rushed inside to check on her. Hae-run claimed her legs were swollen from mosquito bites, so Shohun offered to get ointment. However, Shobchan insisted on fetching it herself. Alone again, Hae-run teased Shohun about why mosquitoes in his house preferred biting her. Shohun cheekily responded that mosquitoes like people with simple minds, prompting Hae-run to ask if he liked women with simple minds. Instead of answering, Shohun whispered for her to think about her own answer. That night, Hae-run lay awake, pondering her feelings for Shohun. Meanwhile, Shohun also found himself contemplating the same thing until Shobchan asked him to let her stay longer. Seeing her pleading, Shohun agreed. The following day, Shohun left Shobchan with Hae-run in the painting studio, because he had to work as a gardener in Hunyu's uncle's garden, Tunzang, who loved planting rare plants. Meanwhile, Woojing panicked when Hanyu suddenly came looking for Hae-run while she was out. To buy time, Woojing sent urgent messages to Hae-run to come home immediately. Hae-run, who was teaching painting, rushed back home after reading Woojing's message. Thankfully, Woojing pretended to argue with her boyfriend to distract Hanyu and let Hae-run sneak in and change clothes as if she had just woken up. When Hanyu was subtly ushered out, Hae-run returned to the painting studio. Later that afternoon, Shohun picked up Shobchan and invited Hae-run to lunch. On the way, they saw Hanyu at the market, and innocently, Shobchan mentioned that Hanyu was Hae-run's boyfriend, making Hae-run, who didn't want to be seen by Hanyu, hastily find excuses not to join the meal. This incident led her to refuse teaching Shobchan, who had referred to Hanyu as her girlfriend in front of Shohun, causing Shobchan to leave without her knowledge. Coincidentally, Shobchan bumped into Hanyu, who invited her to eat after noticing her wandering alone. It was then that Shobchan realized Hanyu wasn't Hae-run's boyfriend, though he seemed overly confident in assuming she liked him. After the meal, Hanyu escorted Shobchan to Shohun's house before saying goodbye. Shortly after, Hae-run arrived drenched from the rain, searching for Shobchan. She felt relieved to see Shohun's niece back and apologized, promising to teach her painting. When Shohun inquired about Hanyu, Haerun and Shokan reassured him that Hanyu was just a friend. After Haerun finished showering and drying her clothes, she met Shohun, who seemed jealous and asked about Hanyu. This pleased Haerun, and she asked him to be honest, even mentioning a secret unknown to anyone in the village. Shohun, getting annoyed, lifted her roughly to the balcony railing, demanding to know what she really wanted. Calmly, Haerun replied that she knew what she wanted, and when Shohun leaned in to kiss her, he restrained himself and lowered her down. Another day, Haerun sat alone in front of Shohun's empty house. Amun, passing by, approached her and mentioned that Shohun was going back to his hometown. She also described Shohun as a gentle person, despite his aloof demeanor. Aware of Haerun's persistence, Amun advised her to engage Shohun in conversation about plants, as he was known to love them. Taking this advice, Haerun hurried to Tang Zheng's house, who was a plant lover, to ask him to teach her about plants. Unfortunately, she only met Hanyu, who showed her his uncle's collection of plant books. Haerun borrowed 2 books before saying goodbye, but Hanyu tried various ways to spend more time with her, even showing her rare flowers grown by Tang Zheng. When she saw the flowers, Haerun felt familiar with them. That evening, Jia Rong noticed a painting in her daughter's room and decided to replace it, despite Haerun's annoyance. Haerun felt powerless to object. In the following days, Haerun became increasingly frustrated because Jia Rong did not work, which prevented Haerun from going anywhere. Jia Rong seemed to treat her like a child, making Haerun uncomfortable even during their walks outside. Her mother's behavior embarrassed Haerun, and when she resisted, Jia Rong accused her of being ungrateful and cried alone in her room, bearing her problems alone. One day, Jia Rong informed Haerun that she had been accepted into a university in Xijing, with everything arranged for her studies. Though it was Haerun's desire, she felt conflicted knowing she would have to leave Shohun next month. In the morning, when Haerun found Wu Jing in the park with Shohun, she lied about being a private painting tutor. Wu Jing was puzzled but kept quiet at Haerun's gesture. Meanwhile, Jia Rong received a call from Tang Zheng, who deliberately sent Shohun as a gardener, because lately, Haerun was interested in learning about plants. After hearing that Shohun was quite skilled in taking care of various plants, Jia Rong intended to invite him for tea. Haerun, knowing about the plan, appeared anxious, although in the end, Shohun declined the invitation. One day, Jia Rong wanted to thank Shohun by inviting Hanyu and Tang Zheng to dinner. Haerun, not wanting to be part of it, asked Wu Jing to keep her out of it. However, Jia Rong still mentioned Haerun's love for painting flowers. To disrupt things, Haerun pretended to faint, and because of this, Jia Rong scolded Wu Jing for not taking good care of Haerun. And Jia Rong even asked Wu Jing to throw away the clothes that Haerun deemed inappropriate. Overhearing this, Haerun felt upset and arranged to have dinner with Shohun at Peng Zi's wife's restaurant. But Shohun found out about Haerun's lie when he saw her clothes thrown away. Hurt, Shohun didn't come to dinner and burned the painting equipment he was going to give her. The next day, Haerun, curious why Shohun didn't come to the restaurant, went to his house, which was empty and locked. Nevertheless, she still waited for him, who was at the surf equipment store. That night, Jia Rong experienced anxiety again, which made her unable to sleep. Jia Rong was known to have had a lover after her husband died a few years ago, but to protect Haerun's feelings, Jia Rong chose to end the relationship. Unfortunately, that decision only made her unhappy and tortured. When Jia Rong left the room, she experienced anxiety again after seeing a photo of her late husband displayed on the shelf, so she threw away all the photos. Haerun, seeing this, became angry with Jia Rong for throwing away photos of her father that she intentionally displayed. They argued until Jia Rong slapped Haerun. Feeling upset because of Jia Rong's actions, Haerun left home and waited outside Shohun's empty house despite the late hour and rain. When Shohun arrived and saw Haerun crying, he invited her in, offering comfort with warm water and a towel. He even allowed her to sleep in his room while he tended to his plants. After cleaning up, Haerun, unable to sleep, approached Shohun in the glass house and challenged him to a bet using the cactus flower Shohun planted. If it bloomed, they would be together. If not, she'd give up on him. Haerun then sat next to Shohun and rested her head on his shoulder. Shohun seemed to let Haerun sleep on his shoulder until dawn before he moved her to his room and left. In the morning, Haerun searched for Shohun and asked about the flower. Hearing the question, Shohun just smiled and lied that he also fell asleep last night. Shortly after, they went to the market to buy flower seeds and saw koi fish at the market. After wandering around, they ate at a small eatery, and Hae-run asked Shohun to just buy a bowl of food because she wasn't very hungry. At that moment, Hae-run felt annoyed by some women who kept staring at Shohun, so she asked him to judge who was prettier between her and those women. Shohun answered that the woman who paid attention to him looked prettier, even though he only glanced at them briefly. Hae-run then teased Shohun by asking why he wanted to eat with her, who was less pretty than those women, and he simply explained that he was blind. Thinking he liked her, Hae-run was thrilled, and she asked him to hold her hand as they walked home until he suddenly hugged her. Later, she bought a koi fish, and though Shohun initially refused, he let her keep it to make her happy. The following day, Shohun discovered a love note from Hae-run, asking him to follow each message to find her, that leading him to various places they'd been together. He finally found her in the glass house, which she had decorated with various beautiful lights. He was touched by her effort and decided to take her to a village the next day. In the morning, they both hurriedly left in Shohun's car, and on the way, Hae-run deliberately teased him by asking him to adjust her seat position. Shohun then pulled over and adjusted Hae-run's seat position until their lips accidentally touched, making Shohun smile. Arriving at the village, Hae-run followed Shohun as he worked. Afterward, he took her to a surfboard shop once owned by Peng Zi, now closed due to bankruptcy, and Peng Zi eventually chose to help his wife's restaurant business. He shared the story behind it, surprising Hae-run, who hadn't heard him talk so much before. After finishing his story, Shohun decided to go take a shower first, and without realizing it, there was a mirror facing the shower area, allowing Hae-run to peek at him from afar. When it was Hae-run's turn to shower, she deliberately smiled through the mirror, and Shohun, who just realized that she had seen him showering, was shocked and almost choked on the beer he was drinking. In the evening, they discussed shooting stars, and when Shohun asked Hae-run's wish, she only wished for her health and then tried to tease him until he couldn't resist and kissed her. After some time, Hae-run grew concerned about her health as she felt the symptoms of her illness returning. Her worries deepened when she couldn't save her pet koi fish that leaped out of its aquarium. Thinking about how her illness might affect Shohun, she contemplated leaving him to spare him sadness. Seeing numerous messages from her mother, Jdrama, expressing concern, Hae-run finally reached out to her and decided to return home the next day. In the evening, Hae-run, with a heavy heart, bid farewell to Shohun and decided to end their relationship. Hearing that, Shohun remained silent without asking for Hae-run's sudden decision to end their relationship. Hae-run quietly cried because she had to let go of her relationship with the man she loved. The following day, Jdrama welcomed her daughter home, pleased that Hae-run agreed to continue her studies in Jing. However, she requested her mother not to pry into her life. Unbeknownst to Hae-run, Jdrama had secretly been investigating everyone close to her daughter. One day, while attending a party hosted by Hanyu, she met two women who suddenly discussed her father's death, who passed away after due to the unthinkable, and Hae-run's severe illness a few years ago. Despite being considered recovered, the women reminded her that the illness could resurface. On another occasion, Tang Zheng visited Shohun's house to see his plant collection. Upon noticing a painting of Jdrama flowers, which he knew was Hae-run's work, Tang Zheng suspected a romantic involvement between Shohun and Hae-run. He promptly ordered an investigation into Shohun. Sometime later, Tang Zheng received a report revealing Jdrama's secret inquiry into Hae-run and Shohun's relationship. Confronting Hae-run, Tang Zheng disclosed this information and urged her to be truthful. Hae-run assured Tang Zheng that her relationship with Shohun had ended, and she also pleaded with Tang Zheng to keep everything related to Shohun and her a secret. A few days later, Hae-run, who was about to go to see Jing, was surprised to find her garden filled with Jdrama flowers. Unbeknownst to her, Shohun had secretly developed feelings for Hae-run but kept them hidden. When Hae-run came to his house in tears, Shohun saw her university acceptance letter, realizing they would soon part ways. Wanting to cherish their time together, Shohun made efforts to bring happiness to Hae-run before their separation, even planting Jdrama flowers in her garden as a parting gift. As time went by, Hae-run resumed her studies in Jing, but seemed distant and reserved person since leaving. She paid little attention to her dormitory mates' inquiries about her relationship with Hanyu. One day, while avoiding Hanyu, Hae-run bumped into Zhang Yuanqi, who appeared to recognize her. Despite not recalling him, Hae-run acted coldly before walking away. Later, when searching for an apartment near campus, she unexpectedly encountered Yuanqi again, who happened to be renting out a unit. On another day, Hyundu invited Hae-run to his birthday party, but she arrived dressed simply, much to his slight annoyance. At the restaurant where the party was held, Hae-run spotted Yoon-ki, who clarified that he knew her from her late father, who had taught him painting. Yoon-ki shared his admiration for Hae-run's father and expressed no ill intentions toward her. Hearing this explanation, Hae-run apologized for her bad attitude towards Yoon-ki. When Yoon-ki invited her to join the art club, Hae-run refused, but she said she would donate some of her paintings for the charity exhibition of the art club and donate the proceeds from her painting sales. On the day of her move, Hae-run's roommate handed over her paintings to the art club for the exhibition, and since she was not in the dormitory, Hae-run's roommate eventually handed over all of Hae-run's painting collections. Upon learning of this, Hae-run panicked and immediately ran to the exhibition venue because there was one painting she didn't want to sell. Fortunately, the painting hadn't been sold yet. When she met Yoon-ki there, she confessed that she wouldn't sell Shohun's painting from the flower garden to anyone until Yoon-ki suspected that the painting meant a lot to her. On the other hand, Shohun went about his life and was seen taking care of goldfish in a larger number in a large aquarium. On New Year's Eve, Hae-run returned home for the holidays but woke up with a toothache. While searching for medicine, she found her old cell phone and reactivated it. Unexpectedly, Hae-run received a New Year's greeting message that prompted her to contact Shohun and invite him to meet. He told her he'd be home later, so she rushed to his house in Shozo village but found it empty. Unfortunately, she realized that Shohun was in his hometown. Without hesitation, Hae-run booked a plane ticket to Shohun's remote Tibetan mountain village. Despite not understanding the local language, she smiled at the locals until she found Shohun waiting for her. He then took off his jacket and gave it to Hae-run, who hugged him to express her longing. Shohun then invited her to his place while telling her about the Hun and Chong ethnic groups living in the village. Upon reaching the house, Shohun made sure Hae-run got some rest. When she woke up, she found herself face-to-face with Shotong, who turned out to be Shokan's sister. Shotong then let Hae-run know that Shohun was cooking dinner for her. Soon, they'd all sat down for a meal together, with Shohun's mother, Mrs. Song, warmly welcoming Hae-run. Despite not being able to speak Mandarin to chat with Hae-run, she seemed to like her. Hae-run, eager to communicate with Mrs. Song, asked Shohun to tell his mother that she was his friend. Little did she know, Shohun actually told his mother that he wanted to marry Hae-run, which brought joy to Mrs. Song. After dinner, Shohun gave Hae-run warm clothes and an oxygen tank, as they planned to go up the hill. However, Hae-run purposely left behind the oxygen tank Shohun had prepared. At the hilltop, they'd marveled at the scenery, and Hae-run managed to contact her mother, lying that she was on a mountain vacation with friends. After the call, she asked Shohun about the gerbera flowers in her garden. He explained that gerberas bloom after other flowers fade, symbolizing his wish for Hae-run to be his last love. Overjoyed, Hae-run pretended to be low on oxygen, prompting Shohun to understanding what she wanted and immediately kissed her. The next day, Shotong helped Hae-run get dressed in traditional Kong ethnic clothing and then introduced her to Mrs. Song, who gave her a jade bracelet. Hae-run thought it was just a regular gift, not realizing it symbolized her as a future bride for her son. Shotong then took Hae-run to meet some villagers, where Shotong's nephew introduced her as Shohun's future wife in the local language, making the villagers warmly welcome her. News spread quickly, and the villagers congratulated Shohun. When he arrived home, he scolded Shotong for teasing Hae-run. However, Shotong teased him back by saying that Shohun and Hae-run should have children soon. That night, Hae-run hinted to Shohun that they should sleep together, but he ignored it and only gave her a blanket before going to his own room. Annoyed, Hae-run quietly went into Shohun's room and slept beside him, saying she just wanted to sleep. The next morning, she saw a photo of Shohun's youth, and one with Peng-zi and 2 other women. When she asked about the women being his ex-girlfriends, Shotong said all those photos were burned by Zhang and suggested Hae-run look for them in Shohun's house in Shozo village. Shotong also mentioned Shohun's ex-girlfriend being prettier and winning international awards, making Hae-run jealous. Later, Hae-run seemed reluctant to leave and hugged Shohun tightly, prompting him to decide to go home with her. Upon reaching Shozo village, they spent their days happily, openly showing affection for each other until Tang Zhang accidentally saw them being affectionate by the roadside. One night, Hae-run remembered Shotong's advice to search for photos of Shohun's ex-girlfriend. She kept Shohun away by asking him to buy watermelon. then searched for the photos but found a picture of a blooming cactus they had bet on. When Shohun returned, Hae-run teasingly showed him a photo, making him blush. Another day, seeing Shohun busy with work, Hae-run decided to return home, and when meeting Jia-rong, Hae-run excused herself saying she went out to play with her friends. Although worried about Hae-run's condition, Jia-rong admitted she didn't want to restrict her daughter too much and asked Hae-run to always take care of her health. Later, Jia-rong shared Hae-run's actions with Tang Zheng and his wife, but Han-yu's relatives defended Hae-run, asking Jia-rong not to overly restrict her as she was an adult. When alone with Hae-run, Tang Zheng admitted seeing her affection with Shohun, but she clarified she was the one pursuing him. Tang Zheng realized Shohun's sincerity towards Hae-run upon seeing the Jdrama flower painting at his house. A few days later, Hae-run surprised Shohun by hugging him and persuading him to model for a painting in her studio. But he refused, prompting Hae-run to ask him to sit down because she would paint his arms. She even playfully tore his clothes to paint Jdrama flowers and a heart on his back. After finishing the painting, Hae-run teased Shohun not to shower, but he surprised her by kissing her as punishment for using his body as a canvas. They'd also enjoyed collecting fallen bougainvillea flowers together and creating a painting with them. Before bedtime, Hae-run, freshly showered, sat in Shohun's lap and asked him out on a date for the next day. Meanwhile, Yoon-ki had just started working at a health train company where he unexpectedly met Jia-rong, who was one of the executives in the company, and Yoon-ki seemed to fall in love at first sight with her. Despite being a successful student, Yoon-ki often faced underestimation from colleagues and unclear tasks. He also became the subject of office gossip, leading him to calm himself down in the storage room. On the other hand, Jia-rong, known for her professional demeanor, secretly relied on tranquilizers to cope with anxiety. One day, when she ran out of them, she sought refuge in the storage room, indulging in junk food despite her reputation for healthy eating. After a call from her secretary, Jia-rong quickly composed herself before returning to work. Yoon-ki, who observed her, was surprised to see this different side of Jia-rong, known for her professionalism. On another day, Jia-rong spent time again drinking in the storage room, and Yoon-ki, who was spying, suddenly dropped a doll covering him. Quickly, Yoon-ki covered his face with a mask until Jia-rong noticed him and opened the mask. She warned him to keep quiet, and strangely, Jia-rong's firm attitude only made Yoon-ki fall more in love with her. Following their encounter in the storage room, Jia-rong avoided going there and resumed relying on tranquilizers. She made sure Yoon-ki didn't catch on by closely monitoring him during company events. Despite keeping her secret, she gave him challenging tasks at work by giving him various tasks that he had to complete in a short time. Because of this, Yoon-ki was forced to stay up for several days to finish his work. When Yoon-ki finally completed his tasks on time, Jia-rong dismissed his efforts as worthless, leading to his frustration, especially when she openly suggested he resign. On the other hand, Hae-run, who was walking towards Shohun's house, crossed paths with a woman named Kim Zhao who was looking for the location of Shouzo village. Returning to Yoon-ki, unlike Jia-rong's isolated life, Yoon-ki had a supportive family, which ultimately encouraged him to continue working at Jia-rong's company, even though he had to endure pain in his arms after lifting hundreds of boxes of health drinks alone. As he was about to leave, Yoon-ki, who was in the parking lot, saw Jia-rong struggle to change a tire and try to ignore her. Unfortunately, he suddenly felt pity, so he got out of the car to help her. Jia-rong felt both surprised and guilty towards Yoon-ki, who had to use a pain relief patch on his arm to reduce the pain because she had made him work too hard. Since that incident, Jia-rong became softer, praising Yoon-ki's performance during meetings. Meanwhile, Shohun noticed that Hae-run often grew tired and dozed off during the journey. Hae-run, experiencing a troubling dream of being in the hospital, was comforted when Kim Zhao unexpectedly appeared. Shohun, concerned for Hae-run's well-being, pulled over the car when it began to rain, allowing her more time to rest. Upon waking, Hae-run sat on Shohun's lap, kissing him and asking about his past relationships. Shohun briefly answered her questions. One day, Kim Zhao visited Shohun's house and discovered he had been involved with another woman. Upset, she overheard a phone call from Hae-run while in the greenhouse. Hearing Kim Zhao's rude response, Hae-run cunningly asked her to pass on a message to Shohun about washing his socks, which she would pick up the next day, and even invited Kim Zhao to meet before she finally ended the call. Shohun, who knew that Kim Zhao had answered Hae-run's call, immediately contacted his girlfriend and asked her not to misunderstand because Kdrama was not his ex-girlfriend, but rather the younger sister of his ex-girlfriend. He also asked Hae-run to come to his house, and although she had not planned to visit, she hurriedly went to Shohun's house even though it was already dark. When Hae-run arrived at Shohun's house, she found him packing gifts to send to his hometown for Shokan's birthday. Wanting to contribute a painting as a gift, she invited him to the painting studio to finish it for his niece. As Hae-run worked on her painting, Shohun explored the studio and came across a sketch of himself by one of Hae-run's students. Hae-run, touching Shohun affectionately, expressed her desire to protect him from other women's advances. Shohun stopped her and suggested they go home. As Hae-run followed him, she slipped on a brush and almost fell from the second floor. Fortunately, Shohun quickly caught and embraced her, and they both got carried away and spent the night in the painting studio. Another day, Yeon-ki passed by the beach and saw Hae-run being affectionate with Shohun, so he greeted them. Hae-run introduced Shohun to Yeon-ki, who recognized him as the model for Hae-run's previous exhibition painting. Shortly after, Shohun then gave his girlfriend a bouquet of flowers before saying goodbye. Hae-run then asked Yeon-ki for a ride to Hundu's house. Seeing Hae-run with another man and flowers, Hundu felt jealous and questioned her about Yeon-ki. Hae-run explained that Yeon-ki was just a friend and encouraged Hundu to find someone else. During the conversation, Hae-run suddenly received a message from Kdrama inviting her to meet the next day. Hae-run, thinking that Kdrama liked Shohun, accepted Kdrama's invitation. The following day, Hae-run purposely dressed up in a stylish black dress and high heels to meet Kdrama at a cafe. Facing the younger sister of Shohun's ex-girlfriend, Hae-run confessed that she knew about Kdrama's sister's relationship with Shohun and their joint work on plant varieties, even competing abroad. Tragically, Kdrama's sister died in the riots surrounding the agricultural competition. Hae-run mentioned that Kdrama had also lived abroad and been married but had divorced since, suspicious of Kdrama's intentions in seeking Shohun. Hae-run boasted that Shohun would teach her to drive the next day. However, Kdrama reminded her that the next day marked the anniversary of Shohun's ex-girlfriend's death, hinting that he might visit her grave. Disturbed by this revelation, Hae-run struggled to sleep, feeling that Shohun might prioritize his ex-girlfriend's anniversary over spending time with her. The next morning, Kdrama visited her sister's grave and noticed the flowers Shohun had placed there. Unexpectedly, Shohun chose to go to his ex-girlfriend's grave in the early morning and then returned home, where Hae-run felt sad seeing Shohun's empty house. But he soon called her to join him in the car, keeping his promise to teach her driving. Seeing her momentarily sad, Shohun hugged Hae-run, reassuring her that his ex-girlfriend was just a part of his past. To lift Hae-run's spirits, Shohun took her to a taro garden and made a hat out of a leaf for her. When rain interrupted their outing, they sought shelter, enjoying watermelon and taking photos together. After the rain stopped, they visited an acquaintance's house, but since they were out, they went fishing instead. Unlike the typical way of fishing using hooks, Shohun, he used a plant to make the fish intoxicated and float to the surface, making it easier for Hae-run to catch two big ones. After finishing fishing, they both returned to Shohun's acquaintance's place, where Hae-run suddenly fell because of her weakening condition. Quickly, she got up and pretended to act normal so that Shohun wouldn't worry about her health. That night, they spent the evening together by grilling the fish they caught and enjoying their companionship. On the other hand, Jdrama at the office had a chance encounter with Yeon-ki in the elevator. She nearly stumbled when her high heels got stuck, but Yeon-ki swiftly caught her, leaving Jdrama feeling flustered. To lighten the atmosphere, Yeon-ki asked if Jdrama often went home late alone, to which she confessed she did it. This incident led Jdrama to secretly observe Yeon-ki, which made him happy. Later, when some colleagues discussed having dinner with Yeon-ki, Jdrama walked by him, mentioning she would be working late, indirectly addressing him. After work, Jdrama dismissed her secretary early and returned to the office, suspecting Yeon-ki had left without realizing that he was in the restroom. Alone, she went to the storage room to play the piano until Yeon-ki appeared, watching her. Meanwhile, Hae-run, who was sleeping in the hut, had another nightmare about being separated from Shohun. Waking up, she searched for him outside the hut. Tearfully, Hae-run approached Shohun barefoot, professing her love for him. Shohun remained silent upon hearing Hae-run's confession of love, then hugged her while crying with emotion. He also gave her a ring made of grass that he picked. Turning to Jdrama, Her relationship with Yeon-ki seemed to be getting closer. Even the two of them promised to meet in the Shozo Village Park that evening. Enjoying the evening ambience, they strolled and chatted until Yeon-ki suggested they visit a small cabin he frequented with his childhood friends. Yeon-ki then told her that he had never entered it because, according to rumors, there was a monster inside that liked to eat boys. He deliberately told her this to make her more curious and interested in entering the cabin. When Yeon-ki opened the cabin, Jdrama was delighted to find a garden filled with fireflies. Meanwhile, Hae-run and Shohun returned home to find Kim-seo waiting with her face bruised. Despite Hae-run's dislike for Kim-seo, she attempted to plead her case, claiming she was beaten by loan sharks due to her ex-husband's failed business. Kim-seo sought protection at Shohun's place, but Hae-run doubted her story, questioning why she didn't seek help from the police. Kim-seo pleaded again, saying she had no money and asked Shohun to allow her to stay. Unfortunately, Hae-run completely disagreed with the idea and drove Kim-seo out of Shohun's house, while Shohun remained silent and listened more to Hae-run, who then intentionally took Kim-seo to Sholee's hotel. When Hae-run returned home, she saw Shohun lost in thought at the dining table. Hae-run then asked what he was thinking. Shohun replied that he was waiting for her, then kissed her affectionately. The following morning, Kim-seo complained to Sholee about being placed in a room full of mosquitoes, without any repellent, resulting in her getting bitten all night. Sholee, who seemed to already dislike Kim-seo, didn't respond much to her complaint. Later, Shohun visited Kim-seo at the hotel, briefly lifting her spirits. However, he only returned the insurance money from Kim-seo's deceased sister, indicating it was all he could offer to help with her debts. Before leaving, Shohun asked Kim-seo not to disturb Hae-run. That night, Hae-run had another dream about Kim-seo, fueling her worries that Kim-seo might take Shohun away from her. Concerned, Hae-run contacted Hunyu and arranged to meet at a restaurant the next day. In the morning when Hae-run arrived, Hunyu expected a date but was surprised when Hae-run asked to borrow 1 million yuan instead. He pressed her for an explanation, but Hae-run refused to disclose the reason and pressured him into lending her the money. Reluctantly, Hunyu gave in, handing over his credit card. Hae-run then quickly left, asking Hunyu to settle the restaurant bill. As Hae-run left the restaurant, she suddenly felt dizzy and weak. She checked her temperature at the nearest pharmacy and found it was high. Despite feeling unwell, she decided to meet Kim-seo to return Hunyu's credit card and ask her to leave Shohun alone. Kim-seo didn't immediately accept the card and asked for 3 days to consider Hae-run's offer. Upon arriving home, Hae-run's health deteriorated. She received news from Woo-jin, who informed her she was getting married and had returned to her hometown. Even though Hae-run would be alone at home as Jia-rong was also out of town, she didn't mention her illness to Woo-jin. Instead, she sent money as a wedding gift for her nanny. Meanwhile, despite Shohun's financial assistance falling short of covering her debts, Kim-seo chose not to use the credit card provided by Hae-run. Instead, she promptly returned it to Shohun. Upon entering his house, Kim-seo noticed a Jdrama flower painting and asked someone to check the painting after she took a photo of it. According to the person Kim-seo contacted, the painting was an original one with a high selling price, so she was interested in taking the painting. Unfortunately, she had to cancel her plan after Shohun. She then explained that she had come to bid farewell and return the credit card given to her by Hae-run. Later that night, Shohun called Hae-run, who urgently requested his presence at her house. Despite the heavy rain, Shohun arrived and was let in by Hae-run. He returned the credit card with anger, feeling Hae-run had crossed a line. Hae-run tried to calm him, but when he didn't relent, she prepared to leave until he abruptly pulled her close and kissed her. When Shohun accompanied Hae-run to sleep in the room, he warned her not to do anything excessive like what she did to Kim-seo. But Hae-run pretended not to hear what Shohun said, which made him kiss her again. As the night grew late, Shohun woke up after realizing that Hae-run had a fever. Because Hae-run's fever didn't go down even though she had taken medicine, Shohun decided to take her to the hospital. The doctor recommended a blood test, but Hae-run, fearing Shohun would learn about her serious illness, refused. The doctor finally only gave fever-reducing medicine to Hae-run. Upon returning home, Shohun remained by Hae-run's side until her fever began to decrease. On another day, Jia-rong started showing more affection towards Yeon-ki, even arranging to meet alone on the stairs during work hours. When they met, Yeon-ki kissed her without hesitation, despite her initial reluctance to pursue their relationship further. During a business trip where they had rooms on the same floor, Jia Rong seemed to head to Yuan Qi's room to talk, but after he stood in front of her, Jia Rong chose to return to her room. Intrigued by her intentions, Yuan Qi called her immediately and asked her to open her door. However, Jia Rong refused, still uncertain why Yuan Qi could like her. During their conversation, Jia Rong shared her painful life story, recounting the loss of her husband to leukemia, followed by her daughter's battle with the same disease years later. Although her daughter was now declared cured, the fear of the disease returning haunted her every night, leading to alcohol and tranquilizer dependence. She also said that she had tried to start a relationship with other men, but all her relationships failed, which ultimately made her lose confidence because she felt she had failed in various aspects, even thinking she didn't deserve happiness. Despite hearing her hardships, Yuan Qi remained faithful, patiently waiting until Jia Rong finally opened her door. Seeing her in tears, Yuan Qi reassured her, promising to be there for her every night and bring her comfort. On another day, Qin Zhao returned to Shouhun's house, intending to take the Gerber flower painting. However, she saw his house locked and searched for the house key, which he had hidden under his cat's bed. When she couldn't find the key, Peng Zi showed up, causing her to abandon her plan and quickly bid farewell. Peng Zi didn't suspect her actions regarding the house key. That night, Run visited Shouhun's empty house and then went to Peng Zi's wife's restaurant to ask about Shouhun's whereabouts, as lately he had been rarely at home and difficult to contact. Peng Zi explained that Shouhun was working extra jobs as a construction worker alongside his gardening job. Despite this explanation, Run felt that Shouhun was avoiding her. Peng Zi reassured her of Shouhun's love for her and shared Shouhun's past, explaining how he had struggled to open up after his ex-lover's death. He hoped Run wouldn't leave Shouhun, who truly loved her. Promising to stay, Run drank heavily and stumbled back to Shouhun's house. At that moment, Run was taken aback to find Qin Zhao inside Shouhun's house and intended to take the Gerber flower painting. Run's presence halted Qin Zhao's plan, leading to a discussion about why Qin Zhao returned the credit card to Shouhun, raising Run's suspicion of Qin Zhao's intentions. Run questioned Qin Zhao's late-night visit, doubting if it was a ploy to disrupt their relationship. Qin Zhao defended herself, explaining she sought money to clear her ex-husband's debt. But Run, overwhelmed, fainted right when her phone rang because Hundu called her. Qin Zhao then answered the call and informed Hundu about Run's condition. Sometime later, Run, who had regained consciousness, found herself being cared for in the hospital where Hundu faithfully looked after her. She then asked him to keep her condition a secret from Jia Rong. Upon leaving her room, Run noticed Qin Zhao still there, suspecting Qin Zhao learned about her illness. At that moment, Qin Zhao assured Run that she had no ill intentions towards her and wished her well. However, Qin Zhao wondered if Run planned to disclose her illness to Shouhun, but Run refused, not wanting to burden him. Before parting, Run asked Qin Zhao to keep her illness secret from Shouhun. On another day, Qin Zhao managed to steal Shouhun's Gerber flower painting and intended to sell it to Tang Zheng, but he discovered it was fake. Questioned about its origin, Qin Zhao confessed she got it from a friend's salon. Since Tang Zheng refused to buy the painting he deemed fake, Qin Zhao returned it to Shouhun's house. Unexpectedly, Tang Zheng had found out that Qin Zhao stole the painting from Shouhun's house and secretly sent his trusted person to follow Qin Zhao and make sure she returned the painting to Shouhun's house. Meanwhile, Shouli, who was Yuan Qi's older sister, was puzzled by her brother's neat appearance and apparent happiness. Yuan Qi then revealed that he had a date with his girlfriend, but when she asked who Yuan Qi's girlfriend was, he didn't tell her and chose to quickly drive his car to his date's place. Curious, Shouli entered Yuan Qi's room until she saw a painting belonging to Run and thought that her brother's new girlfriend was Run, and suspected her of cheating on Shouhun. When Shouli accidentally met Shouhun on the street, she felt guilty for not telling him that Run had cheated on her brother, so she just reminded him to be more attentive to Run. On the other hand, Jia Rong had just finished getting ready for her date with Yuan Qi when she noticed Wu Jing being affectionate with her husband. Confused, she checked the security cameras around the house to learn more about Wu Jing's relationship with her husband. To her surprise, she saw Run sneaking out of the house, being affectionate with Shouhun, the gardener recommended by Tang Zheng. Suddenly, Jia Rong realized why her daughter had been nervous around Shouhun. Feeling overwhelmed, she ignored calls from Yuan Qi, disappointing him as she didn't show up for their date. At the hospital, Run had just finished getting her blood drawn when Shouhun called and asked to meet her. Ignoring her health, Hae-run planned to leave the hospital, but Han-yu stopped her, leading to an argument that made Hae-run faint again. Concerned about Hae-run's worsening condition, Han-yu decided to tell Jia-rong about her hospitalization. When Hae-run woke up, she found Jia-rong waiting for her and asked about her relationship with Shohun. Hae-run admitted her love for Shohun, which made Jia-rong question if Shohun meant more to her than herself. Hae-run fell silent, torn between her feelings for both. After thinking it over, Hae-run approached Jia-rong in the hospital corridor and agreed to undergo treatment in Sijing, as Jia-rong had suggested earlier. Jia-rong felt relieved and hugged her daughter. In March, Hae-run went to Sijing with Jia-rong without telling Shohun about her treatment, and she kept ignoring his calls. One day in June, her servant accidentally answered Shohun's call in Sijing, forcing Hae-run to talk to him. But she still refused to explain her sudden disappearance, making Shohun feel like she was toying with his feelings, so he decided to end their relationship. Despite feeling sad about the breakup, Hae-run couldn't bring herself to reveal what had really happened. A year later, Hae-run and Shohun still seemed to think about each other. On Hae-run's birthday, Shohun sent her congratulations from afar. Later, when Shohun was packing to move elsewhere, he was surprised to find many of his shirts painted by Hae-run. This left Shohun increasingly puzzled about Hae-run's change. Meanwhile, Han-yu, eager to win Hae-run's heart, went to her house with various dishes. Despite feeling bothered by his visit, Hae-run still met with him. Han-yu had set up all the food on the table. When Hae-run saw it, she hesitated, worried it might be poisoned. So, she asked Han-yu to eat first. As she suspected, he ended up getting food poisoning and had to be rushed to the hospital. After Han-yu got treated and was allowed to leave, he and Hae-run planned to go home by taxi. But then, Hae-run was surprised to see someone who looked like Shohun nearby. She rushed after the person but found no one, leaving her in tears because she missed him so much. Shortly after, Han-yu approached her and tried to persuade her to go home, although she asked him to find another woman besides her. Han-yu completely disregarded Hae-run's words and said he would stay by her side no matter what happened. He didn't mind her tough attitude because all he wanted was her happiness, willing to do anything for her since she meant everything to him. After saying this, he carried Hae-run away. Meanwhile, the person Hae-run thought was Shohun turned out to be him indeed, having overheard Han-yu's words. This made him believe that Hae-run had moved on with someone else. Meanwhile, Yeon-ki and Jia-rong's relationship remained unclear for the past year. They only saw each other at work as boss and subordinate. Yeon-ki, feeling he couldn't continue this way, suddenly confessed that he missed her, but she tried to avoid the conversation. He then took her to a storage room, where they kissed and hugged. Jia-rong revealed she had been going to see Jin to treat her daughter, so she couldn't be with Yeon-ki, as her daughter was her priority. Later, Yeon-ki called Jia-rong after hearing she planned to take a long leave abroad. Worried about losing her, he asked for another chance to date. After some hesitation, Jia-rong agreed. On another day, they went on a date, acting like young couples, watching movies, taking photos together, and even sneaking into Yeon-ki's house. Once inside, Yeon-ki took her to a room, but they were caught by his nephew. Yeon-ki persuaded his nephew to keep quiet by giving him a toy. Shortly after, he took Jia-rong to the painting room, rarely visited by his family members. There, Jia-rong confessed that her late husband was a famous painter, but didn't reveal his name at first. She explained how she used to stay home with him while he painted. After his passing, she started her own business, which led her to meet Yeon-ki. Sadly, she said she couldn't continue their relationship and left the room. Yeon-ki felt upset and cried, thinking about their relationship. On the other hand, Hae-run decided to head back to the dormitory because Han-yu kept bothering her and wouldn't leave her alone. One night, her roommate Shoya excitedly shared that she had fallen for a handsome man she met at a nearby flower shop. Shoya suspected he owned the shop and lived upstairs. To get closer to her crush, Shoya planned to work part-time at her cousin's cafe located next to the flower shop, so she would have a reason to meet the handsome man. Surprisingly, the man Shoya liked was Shohun, who had moved to Sijing. Shoya followed him around, impressed by his kindness, like when he bought a sick fish to help it recover. She even took photos of him to capture his actions. At first, she took pictures from afar, but later dared to approach him openly, snapping photos at the flower shop. Although Shoya tried to engage him in conversation, Shohun responded coldly. He also secretly signaled to his employee to chase Shoya away from his flower shop. While at the dormitory, Hae-run grew curious about the man Shoya liked and sneakily checked his photo on Shoya's camera, which surprised her friend. She then told her friend that the man Shoya photographed was named Shohun. Pretending not to know him, Hae-run lied and said she had only heard of Shohun, but secretly, she felt sad because she missed him. The next day, worried about Shoya getting close to Shohun, Hae-run found an excuse to visit the flower shop and followed Shoya there. Seeing Shohun but sensing his avoidance, Hae-run felt awkward. Sensing this, Shoya asked Hae-run if she knew Shohun, but Hae-run firmly said she didn't know him and asked Shohun to prepare all the roses she wanted to buy. Back at the dorm, Hae-run, who was once friendly to Shoya, became more assertive, asking Shoya to back off from Shohun. She mentioned Shohun's child, who used to learn painting from her, implying his unavailability. Shoya was skeptical until Hae-run suggested asking Shohun directly. So Shoya met Shohun, who agreed with everything as if following Hae-run's instructions. When Shoya asked about Hae-run's relationship with Shohun, he redirected her to ask Hae-run directly. Shoya became more curious and confused about Shohun and Hae-run, so she discussed it with her other two roommates. They suspected Hae-run and Shohun might have had a past romance and still had feelings for each other. Although they had separated, they likely still harbored feelings for each other, as evidenced by how Hae-run seemed unwilling to let Shohun go to another woman. With this reasoning, Shoya's roommates suggested that Shoya give up and stop pursuing Shohun. At the flower shop, Hae-run suddenly came to meet Shohun and confronted Shohun about why he followed her to see Jane. Shohun calmly explained he moved there coincidentally and had the freedom to go where he pleased. Annoyed, Hae-run grabbed a rose from him and questioned about Shoya's attempts to get close to him. Shohun only replied that what Shoya was doing was the same as when Hae-run tried to get close to him in the past, and mentioned how Hae-run came and went as she pleased without considering his feelings. Hae-run, irritated, admitted her dislike for other women mentioning Shohun, apologizing for her past actions. Shohun then asked her to leave, and she reluctantly departed, with her hand hurting from gripping the rose too tightly. As Hae-run left the shop, her illness suddenly recurred, prompting her to try to take her medicine from her bag. Unfortunately, someone accidentally bumped into her, causing her medicine to scatter. Then, it started raining, and she began crying over her life's troubles. Suddenly, Yoon-ki appeared and sheltered her from the rain. Unaware of his past relationship with her mother, Hae-run greeted him, as he was a senior from her campus. Yoon-ki, who was in town for the graduation ceremony, asked why she was crying, and she confessed her heartbreak. Feeling the same, Yoon-ki suggested they go home together. Meanwhile, someone seemed to pick up Hae-run's medicine bottle near Shohun's flower shop. On Yoon-ki's graduation day, Hae-run arrived with flowers for him. Unbeknownst to them, Sholi saw it and thought that Hae-run was her brother's girlfriend. Yoon-ki immediately explained that Hae-run was just his junior at the campus. Shoya and her friends who were in charge of the graduation committee were also present and still upset with Hae-run to the point of not talking to her for a while. However, Shoya's friends urged her to be generous and invited her to join everyone attending the graduation party. Hanyu also attended the graduation ceremony and still believed that Yoon-ki was the man Hae-run liked, so he tried to intervene between them when they were about to take a photo together. At that moment, Sholi invited everyone to have dinner together to celebrate her brother's graduation. At a restaurant, Hae-run was quite surprised to see Pungzi attending Yoon-ki's graduation party, and she felt even more awkward when she saw Shohun, who was also invited to the dinner. Shohun then sat on the remaining seat right between Shoya and Hae-run, making everyone feel uncomfortable, except for Hanyu, who had no idea about Hae-run and Shohun's relationship. Shoya openly showed her interest in Shohun, which upset Hae-run. Pungzi then noticed her discomfort, especially when Shoya kept serving Shohun, causing Hae-run to hold Shohun's hand tightly. Meanwhile, Sholi tried to pour wine for Hae-run, but Hanyu stopped her, saying Hae-run shouldn't drink. Shoya asked if Hanyu was Hae-run's boyfriend, to which he agreed, unaware of Hae-run's feelings for Shohun. Trying to lighten the mood, Pungzi suggested a toast, but Shohun lost his patience and yelled at Hae-run to let go of his hand. Refusing to do so, Hae-run made him angrier, and he dragged her out of the room. Hanyu was surprised and wondered about Shohun's relationship with Hae-run, while Yoon-ki explained they were more than just friends, leaving Hanyu puzzled. Meanwhile, Shohun took Hae-run to a hotel and angrily asked if she loved him, but she remained silent, causing him to storm out. In the elevator, he overheard a woman questioning her lover about Jdrama flowers, which reminded him of his promise to Hae-run. Returning to find her crying, Sho-hun reassured her that she was his last love, promising to wait for her even if she left him again. He hugged her as she continued to cry. The next morning, Hae-run woke up beside Sho-hun, who was still asleep. However, she had a nosebleed and noticed more hair falling out, worrying that Sho-hun would discover her illness. Shortly after Hae-run left, Sho-hun woke up and was puzzled because he couldn't find her except for her fallen hair. He began to realize something was wrong with Hae-run, especially since he had also picked up an empty medicine bottle that fell not far from his flower shop after Hae-run left. Sho-hun then tried to recall the moments when Hae-run had almost fainted several times, making him more convinced that she was seriously ill. Turning to Hae-run, she received a call from Jdrama, who was in America trying to find experts to help treat Hae-run. When asked about her condition, Hae-run lied, saying she was fine. However, realizing her worsening health, Hae-run, who previously disapproved of her mother having a new relationship, opened up and encouraged Jdrama to find someone who truly cared for her. Touched by this, Jdrama promised to do so after Hae-run recovered. Meanwhile, Sho-hun sought answers about Hae-run's illness from Tang Zheng. Han-yu's uncle revealed that Hae-run had leukemia since she was 16, just like her late father, who chose to give up. However, Hae-run always had a strong will to live, supported by her mother's relentless search for the best doctors. After learning the truth, Tang Zheng asked if Sho-hun would leave Hae-run because of her illness, to which Sho-hun firmly replied that he would not. Some time later, Jdrama received a call from an unknown number, which turned out to be Sho-hun. She confessed that she had almost secretly investigated him, but Tang Zi intervened. Though skeptical at first, Jdrama decided to trust her daughter's judgment of Sho-hun. When Sho-hun learned of Jdrama's approval, he cried and promised to take care of Hae-run well. On campus, Hae-run was surprised when Sho-hun suddenly asked her to reconcile. Despite her initial refusal, he professed his love for her. He revealed that he had planned to leave Shozo village but changed his mind after seeing her painting on his clothes. He then embraced her, expressing his intention to heal a disabled fish to restore its happiness. Touched by his words, Hae-run asked him to fight for her, as she had fought for him in the past. Sho-hun agreed, despite never having pursued a woman before. After some time, Shoya decided to let go of her feelings for Sho-hun and wished for his happiness with Hae-run. When she spotted Sho-hun waiting for Hae-run outside the dormitory, she quickly informed Hae-run, who rushed to meet him. Sho-hun then presented Hae-run with an umbrella featuring a fish design she liked and suggested a walk on the beach. There he reminisced about how he fell in love with her while cutting her bangs in his salon. Hae-run confessed that she had been interested in him since their first meeting and had always dreamt of him. They spent the entire day together, culminating in Sho-hun buying a white dress for Hae-run. Later that evening, Sho-hun took her to a lakeside building, sparking suspicions of a proposal. After convincing the guard to let them in, Sho-hun showed her a breathtaking view of the starry sky, reminiscent of their time on the hill in his hometown. As Hae-run anticipated, Sho-hun knelt down and proposed to her, slipping the ring onto her finger. After accepting Sho-hun's proposal, Hae-run began planning their wedding in his hometown. Before leaving, she ran into Han-yu, who still couldn't accept her choice. Hae-run explained that love couldn't be forced, and after hearing her out, Han-yu reluctantly let her go. He asked for one last hug as a farewell, which Hae-run eventually gave, leaving him in tears wishing her well. A few days later, Hae-run and Sho-hun had a traditional Klang ethnic wedding ceremony. Afterward, they went to the village lake. There, Hae-run expressed her reluctance to go abroad for treatment, but Sho-hun insisted she should. He promised to wait for her and not seek other women. Hae-run also told Sho-hun to take care of the fish while she was away for some time, and he tried to reassure her that he would take care of the two fish and wait for her to come back to give them names. Lying on the snowy ground, they both expressed their feelings to each other until Hae-run said she was tired and wanted to take a nap there. A year later, Yeon-ki bumped into Jdrama at a restaurant where she was dining alone. They initially felt awkward and only greeted each other like old friends who had just met, although they tried to conceal that they missed each other. When they were about to part, they looked back at each other, and Yeon-ki admitted he was still waiting for her, moving Jdrama to tears. On the other hand, Sho-hun was approached by an art manager interested in buying his Jdrama flower painting. Sho-hun was confused because he felt the painting was just an ordinary one, but after the manager inspected it, He was sure that the painting was done by a famous painter named Li Tao. Upon hearing the name, Shohun realized that the Jdrama painter was Haerun's father. Shohun then suspected that she intentionally swapped the previous Jdrama painting with the original one, so he refused the manager's offer to buy the painting at high price. Shortly after the manager left, Shohun saw his cactus flower blooming again, but he cried upon seeing it. In the end, it shows Shohun going to the lakeside park, filled with Jdrama flowers, until he saw Haerun coming cheerfully, wearing a white polka dot dress. He immediately hugged her with happiness. Moral lesson from the story: love can be as confusing as a fish swimming in a pond of emotions, and sometimes the best catch is worth waiting for, even if it means sitting by a snowy lake.